Hi, my name's Evan Walton and I was the president of the Newcastle Business Club in the year of 1990. Well, I think the year was probably 1986 and I was introduced to the club by Bill Parker and Bill Rock, who were neighbours of each other in Watt Street, and that's where Susan and I had our first business. And then started from there. Every week there was a luncheon on, and that was pretty taxing back in those days. But it was very good because it was all light stuff, you know, interesting speakers, and that's where it all started. My introduction to the club was very enjoyable. We had our regular regular meetings every week, and and of course that was probably 46 sort of meetings a year. It was very involved back then, but we had some impromptu speakers. We had some very wonderful speakers, interesting topics, but they were probably a lot quicker and shorter than the way it's done today. And I've got no complaints with the way it's done today because we're really in a busy world. Much more relaxed back in those days, and probably a bit more people friendly. So my introduction to the club was with Bill Parker and Bill Wallace, who both worked just next door to us in separate businesses. And so that I got off to being a member of the club very easily, and then fit into the scene very quickly, because it was only a matter of a few years before I became president. And we had a really wonderful crowd, and basically our numbers were around the 40, sometimes 50 mark from our membership, which wasn't too bad considering we're getting together every week. And of course one of the problems was you had to guess how many were coming, because the caterers were really onto us to try and get as close as you could to the numbers that were coming, and it wasn't an RSVP job back in those days. So that made it a little bit hard, but the guesstimations were pretty good overall. Well, we had a situation where we were sort of asked to look for another venue, and it was tried by the club, and we settled on the Novocastrian Motor Inn, and with Laurie Lanham, who was the owner at the time, and it worked out very well. And it was easy parking, and people didn't have any problem with that. But that was to do with a bit of catering problems in our previous venue. And our meetings were, as I said, very well attended, and we really enjoyed the comradeship. My wife Susan was a very good support member of me, and without her help, both of us would have had problems getting on with our business. And it was only a new business, had only been operating in the CBD for about 4 years, and as you know, she's a very well-known optometrist in town. We've been in the CBD now for 33 years, and of course Susan was pregnant, and we had a baby Hannah that came along in March, so it sort of created problems, but not too much to Susan. She had exactly 1 week off work and then took baby to work. So I don't know what they go on about, all this leave, maternity leave and parental leave and so forth these days. So Susan was very supportive, and we actually had committee meetings at people's homes. And I remember a heavily pregnant Susan, you know, making sandwiches and so forth for the members of the committee. And some people wanted to outdo others, but we just stuck to the sandwiches, and that went down very well, and a couple of beverages. And we had a very good committee, and we worked well, and communications was very good between all of us. And during the course of the 12 months, we had some interesting outings with the committee and the club members. We actually were invited to the officers' mess at Rap Williamtown, and quite a few of us went up with partners and had a lovely meal in the officers' mess. And we had a bit of a close association with the Air Force for quite some time, with mainly the officers, and that was very, very good. That revolved around probably an appreciation of the members of the mess being involved with the Newcastle Club. And so let's not get it mixed up, the Newcastle Club and the Newcastle Business Club. Subscriptions were certainly different. And during this particular year, and probably the previous year as well, there was talk of maybe having women as members of the club, and spreading the club a little bit wider than what it was. And one lady, Tony Holly, she was actually getting the newsletter for about 2 or 3 years beforehand. And so she had an interest in the club, and that we actually admitted 3 ladies later on that year. After the discussion was brought up and passed at the annual general meeting, and our first 3 lady members were Tony Holly and Lynn Mongoski from the Raider, and Marie Charlton. So they were the first elected females to the club. It would have been during the probably the bit over the halfway mark that of my tenureship. We did a donation to the museum, Newcastle Museum, of around about $10,000, and that went towards the purchase of a petrified tree. And it used to be on display when the museum was down at Newcastle West, but I'm not too sure where we're up to with it now. It's probably still petrified. And during the course of the year, we also had a committee luncheon, evening meal with the committee and their wives and life members at the Newcastle Club. And again, the Waltons had to get special permission from the club to allow their daughter, who was all of just a few months old, to be able to be in the club. Things changed a little bit since then, for the better. I think that one thing about the club, the comradeship has been very good and most helpful to a lot of the people that were in attendance through networking. It was a very friendly club and very communicative. And even at the lunch last week, you know, we sat at the table with a few past presidents and people from my era. So it's really nice to see them attending as well as a lot of young ones. And that's great. Great for the club and great for Newcastle.
Visit www.newcastlebusinessclub.com.au to learn more.